And a good old knees up.
And a good old knees up,
and a
yeah.
good celebration.
Yes, but thank you very much.
We've done very well so far, but before we head back to the valuation day, I'm off to take in some of Yorkshire's countryside and an intriguing house. Most of these big old country houses have got a few skeletons in the cupboard, or maybe there's a mystery that remains unsolved for years. Well, Shibden Hall in Halifax is no exception. For more than 300 years it was home to the Lister family. In 1826, Anne Lister took over the management of the estate after the death of her Uncle James. Anne was chosen to inherit the estate, despite being a woman, because of her passion and love for farming and business. And she started a strict programme of education for herself, which meant getting up at 5 o'clock every morning to study Greek, Latin and algebra. She also kept a tight rein on the business empire, which included managing property, quarrying, mining and running a casino. Very odd behaviour for a woman of the time. Now just imagine this. She's 34 years old, completely dressed in black, a big high neck ruff, heavy great big stout boots and a big round hat. She certainly gave the locals something to talk about. And what's so fascinating about this place is from the day she moved in to Shibden Hall, Anne kept detailed journals, or diaries if you like, of everything that affected her in her life, from her everyday activities to her financial affairs, right through to her personal emotions, which included numerous affairs with women. Anne recorded her journals in 27 volumes, comprising of more than 4 million words, but most of it was written in code that wasn't cracked until 50 years after her death. And this is guide Tony Sharpe, who knows a great deal about this house, and so he should really, because you've been working here for 24 years. Stunning house. Now, judging by that image of her, you could say she's unusual, I'd say formidable.
Absolutely. She could be quite disarming as well, though. She was, once people had warmed to her, but initially people looked at her more than once because they thought, is that a man? She was so masculine and quite swarthy in appearance, but she was quite happy to be mistaken for a man as well. In fact, she found it quite flattering. She longed to be a man and she dressed as a man most of her life.
So what about these secret diaries? Why was she writing in code and who cracked it?
She did have numerous affairs with local ladies, some quite high up aristocracy as well. And for the more, I would say, raunchier passages in the diary, she devised a code.
Right.
And about 60 years after her death, a descendant of hers, John Lister, who was the last owner of the house, found the diaries behind the panels in the house and, along with a Bradford antiquarian, cracked the code. They had actually seen a line in the diaries that said, "In God is my," and then there were 4 symbols, and they knew that the phrase was, "In God is my hope." So using those 4 symbols, every time...
They could break the words down.
That's right. Every time they came across one, they put the corresponding letter above it. And by the time they decoded it, they were absolutely horrified. And then they realised, because of how graphic they were, she really described her love affairs in great detail. And Arthur Burroughs said, you have to destroy these diaries, they're pornographic. And he said, I can't. John said, I can't do this. This is my family history. The time isn't right now, so they wrapped them back up in paper, sealed them again, put them behind the panels where they'd found them.
Is that where they were found?
And that's where they laid. Yeah.
Wow. And there's so many panels in here, isn't there? You wouldn't know where to look.
No, we're not sure where they were found, actually, but they were discovered again in the 1930s when Halifax Corporation took over the house.
Well, she had great taste in furniture as well. You've got some wonderful examples here. Tell me about this refectory table. It's a lovely extended one.
It is. It's a beauty. It dates from about 1590, and it was made for Robert Waterhouse. His family were living here before the Listers. It's about 9 feet long at the moment, but when it's fully extended, it's about 15 feet long. It
looks like it belongs in a huge, great hall, not a room this size, but something 4 or 5 times bigger.
Yes, it does take up, when we extend it, it does take up the whole room virtually. An interesting story is in 1937, when George VI and the Queen Mother came to Halifax on part of their nationwide coronation tour, Halifax Corporation wanted the table taking down to the town hall so the royal party could dine off it. Unfortunately, when the workmen came up to take it on a wagon, they discovered that they couldn't get it out of the building. So the itinerary was changed and the royal family came here instead. So we had George VI and the Queen Mother dining at Shibden Hall. Oh, what a lovely story. Oh, I'm pleased it didn't get out of the house then. Absolutely.
Every room here is jam-packed full of wonderful pieces, and the house is definitely well worth a visit. But I'm going to focus on a few pieces in this room because they all have their virtues, and we're in a dining room, a glorious dining room. And every dining room in the 17th century would have something like this. It's a spice cupboard. We can tell it's 17th century because of its stylised front. And if we have a look on the inside, you can see the fitted interior. This is where all the spices would have been kept. Drawers of various sizes. Now, this dates back to the mid-17th century when spice was very, very rare. It would have taken, let's say, 2 or 3 months to be brought back from the West Indies by the tall ships. It would have been filled with nutmeg and vanilla. And to put it into a value context of its day, a box filled with spice this size would be the equivalent of buying a house, let's say the average townhouse in Bristol or London in its day. Very, very valuable. Hence, it was always locked up. Now, you remember that chair I fell in love with at the valuation day? It had a quality about it. It was quite naive. It was badly damaged, but I did like it. Well, there's one here that's exceptionally fine, and it's like a little throne. You could say it's fit for a king. It's a mini version of the real thing. If you took the base away, which obviously elevates it so the infant can sit at the dining table, you have got the real Yorkshire high-back wainscot chair, which the house owner in the 17th century would have had because he was the most important person. Everybody else that sat with him would have been dining on a bench or form. And there's a mention of this in the house's inventory. It was built in 1677 and it cost £1.10 with 10 other chairs. And to think it's for a child is unbelievable. Can you imagine what he must be thinking? A little infant in there, be like a little upstart, chucking his food around the table. I don't know. Anne loved Shibden Hall, and you can see why, can't you? But she also loved adventure too, and she was on the lookout for anything that was exciting. And sadly, when she was travelling through Russia, when she was 49, she caught fever and died. But she did leave behind a wonderful legacy of a very individual woman for all of us to appreciate. But right now, it's time for us to go straight back to the valuation day to see what other stories